It's all anti-U.S.
No, no,
All
we're
anti-U.S.
discussing here the Middle East specifically, and we're talking about Iran and understanding
And
why
China's not there meddling with the Belts and Roads Initiative, trying to
there,
enslave them
there's a lot of
financially.
meddling happened, but we're specifically talking about why Iran sees the
Yeah, well, you're
U.S.
only wanting to focus on the U.S. because you're clearly with the mullahs.
No, I'm not with the mullahs. Today on Conversations Aloud, we're diving into one of the most contentious topics in global politics, America's foreign policy in the beautiful Middle East, from the recent war between Iran and Israel to America's ongoing role in the region. We'll explore U.S. actions about security, strategy, and some other things, deeper things. Joining us is Joseph Leonard. He's an author, a speaker, and host of the Constitutionalist Politics podcast. And he's written extensively on terrorism, politics, and national security. Welcome to the show, Joseph.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's Joseph M. Leonard. I have to stick the middle initial in there because it looks French. It's not Leonard. It's Leonard without an O. At some point, I haven't dug back far enough in the genealogy. It was Leonard Łaskowicki or what? Who knows? It derived from Polish at some point. Leonard without an O, but because there is a Joseph Leonard out of South Carolina who is also a Christian author, so I have to make sure I am not he is not me, and neither of us will be confused for Shakespeare.
Well, good to make that distinction. Joseph M. Leonard, welcome. Good to have you over here. Joseph, so you've written, a lot about U.S. national security. What first drew you to this field of politics and national security?
Well, I've always been involved in politics since an early age. My godfather was mayor of a downriver Detroit suburb town. So I had gotten involved in politics at an early age. The terrorism thing just kind of happened because, like most of my books, and my sixth international book, The Book of Kennedy, just came out about life and living. And I like to say that about terror strikes coming soon to a city near you. Also, it's not about death and destruction. It's about life and living. And, the old Rodney King, why can't we just get along, thing? Why are we constantly focusing on things that divide us? So Terror Strikes is too, also a book about life and living. But most of my books come to me in dreams. And indeed, Terror Strikes was just one of those books that came to me in a dream, and I got up and created an outline, and
So you
years later, in that case, there was
so
the
you're
book.
sleeping and you get a download and you wake up and it's there and you just need to kind of write it down.
Exactly. I like to say of my writings are certainly from me. I'm the one doing the typing, but I like to say they're not of me, they're through me.
So you're the messenger in a way.
Yeah. Good, bad, indifferent, whatever you take away from them, agree, disagree. Yeah. Don't shoot the messenger, as the saying goes, right?
No, we might have to. We'll see. You've written a couple of books and host a podcast. What's the core message that you're trying to share with Americans?
Similarities versus differences. Constitutionalist politics. It's not a Catholic or a Methodist or a Protestant or a Presbyterian or a Baptist. It's about faith in general. Yes, of course, Christianity from that standpoint, as I am a Christian, but those things that should bring us together, things that we should agree upon. How can we not, right? Like the commandment, really, in the original Aramaic, Hebrew, Greek, and Latin is thou shalt not murder innocents. there is a difference. You're not right. I don't have the right to murder you. You don't have the right to murder me, except in certain situations of self-defense and whatnot, justifiable use of force. We shouldn't be murdering each other. How can we not agree on that?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's I guess the definition of innocent is dependent on the person that you're speaking to, right? And dependent on the government that or the country you're part of. That's the main issue. That party sees them as innocent, the other party sees them not as innocent, and that's the disagreement here, right?
It's like in Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You. I deal in the freedom fighter, quote unquote, for those who can see I'm using air quotes, and I apologize. The ugly green screen, because it doesn't allow me to project an image here live. But I'd rather show you my ugly green screen than my ugly couch. But the dichotomy of Osama bin Laden, right? Originally, he was an ally of the US, seen as a freedom fighter for the Afghans trying to resist the Soviet Empire imposition and invasion. Clear, outright invaded without provocation, and the US and Osama helped try to help the Afghanis resist that invasion, and in due time, of course, did. The Soviet Union eventually went bankrupt and collapsed and had to withdraw from the bloc nations it enslaved. But then, of course, later turned and decided, okay, well, I want to take on the US too. We took on the Soviets, let's take on the US now, right? One person's supposed freedom fighter is another person's terrorist. We see that in modern day Turkey with Erdogan. The US is allied 99 times out of 100 with Kurdish folks. And only because of geopolitics and the time, we didn't help them or allow them to create a Kurdistan out of Iraq. We wanted to keep Iraq intact after the Gulf Wars there. But Erdogan is forever at odds with the Kurds in Turkey who want their own independence, because it's only a matter of arbitrary lines that were drawn, that these different various tribes and cultures were segregated into, like Iraq, post-World War I, post-World War II. Like it or not, they kind of weren't given a say. The Kurds, the Sunnis, and the Shias all lumped together in this nation state called Iraq. Like it or not, lump it. This is what you
Yeah,
got.
and I mean that's kind of an image you get for a lot of the countries in the Middle East, where it was the Ottoman Empire, kind of all within that, and obviously each area has its own history. Like Iraq has Mesopotamia and Babylon and all those things, but as the country, it's kind of a newly formed concept of what Iraq is. It's a new thing, and Britain and France came together and pretty much drew some lines and said that's Iraq. That's Syria, that's Lebanon. And the way that they drew the lines didn't sometimes match up to the realities of the ground, and caused a lot of infighting and they want their own territory and who.
And to some minds, they wanted it that way. Some wanted the territories at odds and always in conflict, in hopes that it would avoid a movement like the Nazis, because the Nazis had a lot of allies in the Middle East. He met with the Mufti. Saddam Hussein's Ba'athist Party drew out of his father's alliance with the Nazi Party. So, I mean, a lot of those. So, some people wanted the continued fighting so that they couldn't and wouldn't collectively come together to be a bigger, broader problem. While others, again, yeah, just didn't know, didn't care about the peoples of the regions, and that there probably should have been a Sunni stan, a Kurdistan, and a Shia stan rather than one nation of Iraq.
Yeah, it's interesting. Do you feel that U.S. Policy in the Middle East is truly about what they say, which is democracy and freedom, or more about kind of power and strategic dominance?
It it depends on the circumstance, as always. And I am definitely not one of those, oh, America's the fault of everything. You know, I will say the failing of World War One finale, which clearly was going to lead to a World War II, was the failing of Wilson, withdrawing from the world and continuing the silly notion in the 20th century that somehow oceans completely separated us from the world, and whatever France wanted to do to Germany, it's their problem. It's not going to affect us again. What a short-sighted and stupid notion that was. A almost assured World War II, and thankfully some people learned that if you try to at least take a former adversary and help them rebuild, I am not fond of the concept of nation state building, but the reality is if you defeat an enemy and leave them in squalor, what are you going to get? Hate. You're just going to allow the situation for more festering of hate and assurance of more future conflict, as opposed to post World War II Germany and Japan now being allies of freedom. And I do agree that the U.S. people, most of the time, not necessarily always our leaders, right? We have bad leaders at times too, do want others to have right of self-determination, and we strive for that. It doesn't always work that way. It's not always nice. It's not always clean. It's look at Iraq as an example. We put up with Saddam Hussein for a long time because of Iran falling out of the U.S. orbit with the Islamic Revolution there, and they're cozying up to China and Russia. So we cozied up to Saddam, right? He may be an evil dictator, but he's our evil dictator, right? And so we put up with him as a counter and helped feed the Iran-Iraq war, again in the domino effect idiocy notion of, well, if we keep them fighting, it won't become a bigger problem for everybody else.
Yeah.
Good, bad, agree, disagree. I'm not casting a judgment on that. I'm just saying that's the theory. That's the way it played out. Could it have played out better? Most certainly. But again, you know, like the Iraq, had we post World Wars created a Kurdistan, Sunni stan, and Shia stan, would things have been better? Would things have been worse? They would have been different. We don't know what we don't know. It didn't happen. We're dealing in the reality of what we have now.
Yeah. It's very obviously difficult to imagine. I mean, it's very easy to say, oh, but if we did it this way, there'd be peace and there'd be a lot of better situations. But we obviously don't know that outcome.
There will always be those. This is it's like with my constitutionalist show. I talk all the time that some people fail to deal with human nature. Put faith aside, put religion aside, any and all of the faith. Deal with humanity as it exists. We have always been a warlike creature. We have always had people who don't want to do anything and expect others to take care of them, which means also there will always be and have been people who will want to fill a vacuum and use others' laziness for their power, control, enrichment, right? Human nature is the problem here. There will always be some who will exploit any situation for their own personal power, control, gain.
Yeah, no, definitely that will exist in every situation. I think a lot of criticism comes towards the U.S.'s involvement in the Middle East, because to your point, it seems like there's two options: either the U.S. takes a passive involvement and kind of let whatever happens, or it dictates what happens. It's the dominant, aggressive kind of person that says, I want this outcome to happen, or I don't want this outcome to happen, no matter what, consequences or deaths happen. And we see that in a number of places. You mentioned there the U.S. supporting the Taliban against the Russians because they didn't want the Russians to take an advantage. Then you've got the Iraq-Iran war, where in fact they supplied weapons at one point to both parties fighting each other.
Both sides,
which is
yes. Again, the concept of, if you keep them fighting, they're not fighting us, right? If they're warring against each other, they're not warring against Europe. They're not warring against the United States. They're not warring against African nations, right? So yeah, divide and conquer again, right? And your point would be valid, except there are other forces, obviously. If we take it completely hands off, it doesn't mean Russia and China aren't always going to be meddling there too.
It's true that, every party that wants to meddle or can meddle will meddle, but I think there are certain levels to it. Like the U.S. supporting extremist factions in Syria that became ISIS, or giving chemical weapons to Saddam to fight the Iranians, which then got into the wrong hands, and then those chemical weapons were thrown at the Kurdish people, and it killed a lot of people. It seems that America does get involved in supporting these very extremist ideologies, like the Taliban, like these factions in Syria, which then have such an impact on not just the region. It causes such a civil war that actually now we're seeing a huge impact on Europe itself, because people are trying to leave those places because it's, in a lot of instances, unlivable. And so you've got a mass migration happening, but it's always the same thing in that there's a short-term focus, but a long-term blowback that isn't considered. It feels like it's not. It's either it's incompetence when it's not considered, or it's kind of is the plan to kind of make it, as you said, destabilize the region forever, because we don't want superpower to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, the lesser of evils, unfortunately, is often bad choice, worst choice. Right? And I want to push back on we were allies of the Taliban. Just like World War II, we were never really allies with Stalin, who killed more people than Hitler ever did. They were our enemy too. It was, okay, as Churchill said, we're going to have to, unfortunately, put up with Stalin and deal with Stalin, because Hitler is the worst, the even badder choice of allowing to happen. So we put up with Stalin. He was never really an ally. The Russian people are not our enemy. The Russian leadership is our enemy. Putin is now our enemy, not the Russian people. Again, Putin invaded Ukraine, a sovereign nation, wholly unprovoked again, using the same Hitlerian argument. Well, some of them speak Russian. I just want to make the Russian speakers part of Russia. It didn't fly with Hitler either, right? So it's the same with the Taliban. The Northern Alliance in Afghanistan was always our ally, like the Kurds in the Iraqi situation. Uh, and the Taliban were kind of tag-alongs, come-alongs, and well, we kind of got to hold our nose and look the other way because they're fighting the Russians too,
Yeah,
or the
yeah.
Soviets at the time.
I feel like the situation with
There's a distinction there. There's a distinction, right?
I feel like the situation with Stalin is a bit different in that, yeah, they weren't allies, but we're fighting the same enemy, and therefore you do your thing and we'll do our thing and we'll try to defeat the enemy. But I feel like with the Taliban, they actually supported them a bit more and kind of facilitated the weapons to go to them to fight the Russians. And
Just as we did Stalin. Did we not supply weapons to Stalin? Certainly we did. But at the same time, we tried to keep them from getting the atomic weaponry that they were seeking. Because remember, Stalin invaded Finland long before Hitler invaded anyone because he wanted at the heavy water for their atomic program. And if we didn't do something to prevent the theft of the Manhattan Project, that we know there were traitors leaking secrets to the Soviets, they would have had the bomb sooner. They might have had it first. And again, if it weren't for Hitler's own, fanaticism of that atomic energy is a Jewish thing. Oh my God, we can't invest fully in that because it's a Jewish science, even though Germany is the birthplace of where the concept of uranium and plutonium bombs, nuclear energy first came from. It was a German scientist who rushed forth his paper to leak it out of Nazi Germany so that it wouldn't become an exclusive Nazi science.
Interesting. Yeah. Have you been surprised by Trump's U.S. foreign policy? Has he done what you expected, or has there been any surprises?
People have this ridiculous notion that the America First thing is like I criticized Wilson, America alone or America only, that somehow we can pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist in our modern times, and especially now with hypersonic and supersonic weapons. And like there's these things called ICBMs now, like oceans don't protect you. America First was never, ever, even though some tried to portray it as isolationist and America only and America alone. It was never that. So does Trump's foreign policy and some of the things that have happened surprise me? No. He's a man openly stated he wants to seek peace if and where possible, but he's not afraid to act if he feels he must.
Yeah. It seems to be the case that is right. I think the people that will criticize that say that, well, when it comes to the Iran, which is what we're talking about here, his attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, Iran was in the negotiating table, negotiating with the U.S. And as they were negotiating with
certainly,
the US,
just like a child at the store throwing a tantrum negotiating for a sucker. Right. To pretend they were negotiating in good faith is just absurd.
So explain that, because they made all the concessions.
Openly state they want to vaporize Israel, and the United States is the big Satan. They don't want to just kill all the Jews. They want to vaporize Europe and the United States as well. So to pretend they don't run around chanting death to America, and while the Iranian people are not our enemy, most of them, if they're saying it under force and duress. They don't mean it. Again, Iranians were our allies for a long, long time until the Islamic radical revolution. Now, all Islam is not a problem. just certain fundamentalists, like in my book, Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You. It's not, despite, I have to have software on my phone because I get death threats. Because, of course, there's people who, they see the book and they make assumptions, right? Oh, it must be Islamophobic and all this bullshit. Oh, and he must be a Jew lover, Zionist, and blah, 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 blah. My Tokyo chapter talks about Om Srinyoko, the supreme truth, Christian doomsday cult, every bit as fanatic as the Iranian leadership, who have this apocalyptic notion that their version of religious text means sowing evil, doing good, raining death and destruction will, like in the Tokyo Christian cult, to reign in the return of Christ sooner. And in the Iranian, the 12th Imamers, right?
So just on that,
They think raining death and destruction is somehow valid.
but that doesn't seem what played out, if anything, because there's this image that they are a death cult that are not logical, that are not rational players, that want death and destruction. But it seems like they had weapons.
They openly stated.
Yeah.
They also.
Yeah.
I'm making it up.
So there's rhetoric, and then there's what they do. So there's a lot of rhetoric around
Yeah.
death.
Hitler was all rhetoric until he wasn't also. And we're talking descendants who were allies with the Nazis in exterminating the Jews then. So to pretend, maybe it's just all for show.
Well, hang on.
Is
So
nonsense.
let's go into this. So basically, Iran had weapons that could attack Israel because they used them and it did hit some military targets.
And they did on a daily basis almost.
Yeah. But they didn't use them until Israel attacked them, right? So it was more of a reaction to Israel.
Excuse me, Hezbollah and Hamas weren't launching missiles into Israel for the last 40 years.
When did Hezbollah get
They
created?
aren't puppets.
When did Hezbollah get created?
The exact year, I don't know.
Hezbollah
can't
got
answer
created
that.
in 1982 because of the invasion of Israel into Lebanon. It's a Lebanese military party that was supported by Iran, but it was created to push out Israel from Lebanon when they invaded there. But yes, Iran does support those groups in the same way that, would you say, U.S. supports a lot of groups that carry out terrorist activities?
Again, that's the freedom fight. It depends on whose ox is gored.
Well, that's the issue, right? It's the definition of those things to what party.
Who attacked who on October 7th? Was Hamas and Gaza at peace for at least a decade before October 7th happened? The answer is a definitive yes. They had self-rule and weren't there.
Oh, no,
Israel only went in after October 7th.
Self-rule means you rule everything around you, your borders, what enters, what comes out. Obviously, Gaza didn't have that because Israel decides what goes in, what goes out, including the people, what goes in and what goes out. So it was a blockade that they had.
Yeah, what went in was cement, and what happened was the elected terrorists used them to build tunnels to invade Israel.
Nevertheless,
they didn't use the money and the supplies to help their people.
Nevertheless,
because like the Iranian fanatics, they're only concerned about one thing: killing other people.
If that was the case, then Iran would have immediately started shooting Israel as Hamas fought Israel, but they didn't. They didn't want to engage Israel. If they were a death cult,
because they knew they'd get their asses kicked. They knew they would be lit up like Christmas.
But that's the point that people make, because
it was self-preservation why they didn't do that.
But if they're a death cult, why would they need self-preservation, right? If all they wanted was
that is a very because these terrorists, a lot of them, despite murder-suicide bombings, where they feel they're martyring themselves. Most of them are hypocrites, frauds, and liars. They want to live. They want to kill others, but they want to live.
It's an interesting way to look at it. I guess the question is, why do you think Iran hates America?
Because we support Israel for the most part. That's not the sole reason. They would hate, if Israel weren't there, they would still hate us because of the cultural difference and the basic concept, again, that we want people to have some degree of self-determination, whereas, again, they want the full dictatorial lording over all. We tell you what's good for you, like it or not. And I get it. I understand some on that side see the U.S. as trying to push some of that also. And again, I don't quite know what to say, how to phrase it here. Every side is got an agenda. There is absolutely, positively no question. No side is pure in this. I want to say that. Let me say that. We're dealing with humans here. It's the human nature thing again. It's not like one side are all angels and the other side are all devils, right? As the saying goes, Hitler loved his dog. Hitler loved animals. PETA might love Hitler because Hitler loved that. No one is 100% good. No one is 100% evil.
Yeah, I agree that no one is 100% good or evil. I think, the question is, why doesn't Iran say death to Canada, which is also pro-self-determination, or death to the Scandinavian countries, or death to any other place, but they focus mostly on the U.S.
Because Canada is no threat to them.
And that goes to the point of what America probably did to them in 1953 with the coup, where they had a democratically elected government and they did a coup to install the Shah, which tortured their people. And then they supported Saddam to attack Iran, and that caused a million deaths in Iran. And then you have Iran over here and Afghanistan to the side, and the Iraq to the side, and America invaded Afghanistan, which is Iran's neighbor to the right. And then Iraq invaded the U.S., which is U.S. invaded Iraq, which is Iran's neighbor to the left. And suddenly you have this kind of America's on both sides. They removed democratically elected government. They supported all these wars against Iran. Can you see why Iran sees the U.S. as, from an Iranian perspective, after all those events, as what they call the big Satan?
Yeah, but most Iranians don't.
Well, how do you know that?
Only the fanatics do.
How do you know that?
Because we see it on the internet every day. We see the allies. We know Obama didn't aid the Green Revolution that would have tossed the mullahs out on their asses years ago, because Obama said in his audacity of a dope book that when the winds shifted, he would side with the terrorists, and indeed he did. So, yeah, Canada is not really a threat. So even without Israel, they would hate the U.S. because, again, geopolitics at force here. The Russians and the Chinese do the same domino theory politics also. But yet all I hear you whining about is the United States meddling. It's fine that Putin invades a sovereign nation. It's fine that the Chinese are, murdering and slaughtering Uyghurs. It's convenient to ignore that.
I'm saying it's fine or we should ignore that. The topic that we're discussing.
But yeah, not a peep out of you, not a peep. It's all anti-U.S., all anti-U.S.
We're discussing here the Middle East specifically, and we're talking about Iran and understanding why.
China's not there meddling with the Belts and Roads Initiative, trying to enslave them financially.
There's a lot of meddling happen, but we're specifically talking about why Iran's.
Yeah, we're really wanting to focus on the U.S. because you're clearly with the mullahs.
No, I'm not with the mullahs. I'm speaking to someone who is focused on U.S. politics and U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, and that's the topic that we're discussing. We can discuss about China and Ukraine and all these other things, but that's the discussion that we're having right now. But it seems like you're trying to switch the topic because we're going a bit deeper.
I am clearly pointing out what you're saying. Your narrow focus makes it very clear what this is about.
What narrow focus? We're talking about why Iran,
anti-Americanism, attacking America. America is the fault of everything. Oh, Iran, oh, they're all a bunch of saints there. They don't want to murder a bunch of people. They're not developing nuclear weapons for the sole purpose to wipe out a nation.
No one's saying all
no, of course you won't say it.
No, I'll say it.
That's what you're backing.
Let me just be very clear. I don't support the mullahs. I don't support a lot of the things that they've done. I'm talking about why does Iran see the U.S. as a threat, as big Satan? Can it be because of what the U.S. has done in Iran? And it seems like what you're saying is that no, there's no justification for why Iran dislikes the U.S. Is that what you're saying?
In their minds, I'm sure that is their justification. I can turn the tables and do the same thing. Is there no justification for the U.S. to fear or worry about the Iranian mullahs who are running around saying death to America and death to Israel? There's no one in the United States running around saying death to Iran.
Except they're bombing Iran. I mean, they're not
military targets. Yes, we're not bombing the Iranian. We're not bombing Dresden like war used to be. We and Israel choose precision targets.
How many
and terrorists try to hide behind citizens and use them as human shields. Israel literally drops flyers upon areas. We're going to bomb here tomorrow because they're using this as a military target. That hospital now becomes a legitimate military target. Get out. What other nation on the planet warns the citizens to avoid collateral damage? Does Iran? No.
Actually,
is Iran bombing military targets? No, they're just lobbing things into civilian populations.
So it doesn't actually help if you're notifying people that we're going to bomb here if everything's bombed and there's nowhere for them to go except like a concentration camp where they're going to die eventually over time.
Okay. All right. Conversation's over. You're just a moron.
Oh, so you can't have a conversation. Oh, wow. There you have it, guys. That was a very interesting conversation with Joseph M. Leonard, who couldn't engage in a lot of the topics. I was hoping to have a conversation, a debate to see a different perspective, but it seemed that was very difficult for him to have. If you did enjoy this video, do hit like and subscribe, and we'll catch you very soon. Thank you very much.